educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here is your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for tuning in today. Thank you for tuning in. I have a guest for you today. He is a super dad. He is dating his wife, and he is leading by example by living a contagious and most inspiring lifestyle. He is on a mission to positively impact 1 million role models around the globe to have and to lead a functionality fit life through education, encouragement, and community. He is an award-winning digital thought leader and author, distinguished Toastmaster and keynote speaker, former founding partner and chief operating officer, chief marketing officer of a multi-million-dollar retail company, and a sought-after lifestyle mentor and executive performance coach. He knows the struggle of the juggle, and keeping his health and happiness is a priority. I thank you very much for coming on today. I present none other to you than Dai Manuel. Dai, thank you very much for coming on today, sir.
Hey, Maurice, I'm stoked to be here. I know it's been a lot of back and forth between you and I, but you know what? Things happen when they're meant to happen, and I'm just honored to be here today with you.
So I thank you for coming on, and you know, as I spoke to you about the green room and how I am putting together this session of igniting growth, and I thank you for being one of the key foundational people in this process, right? And one of the things that when we talk about growth and igniting growth, there are some things that we don't want to deal with, and that's being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. We don't understand how you grow in that situation. Sometimes we have this rough exterior, and we don't know how to ask for help or whatever it might be. So give us an idea of why is vulnerability just such a simple thing as being a human being?
Great question, Maurice. Well, you know, vulnerability, I've had a weird relationship with that concept. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us men who identify as men, you know, if we think about it, and I know we were talking previously before we started today, and you know, both being born in '76, we're kids of the '80s, right? And
right.
I mean, we grew up in that very interesting time. You know,
yes.
It was pre where technology is today, pre real internet as we know it today, pre Google.
Right.
We're older than Google, Maurice.
Yeah, I know, right?
You know, like, and you know, telling that to my kids, I'm like, what?
Right.
Really? What about TVs, Dad?
I know.
And I'm like, you know what? You want me to pay for your tuition? Forget that.
I know, right? I know, right?
But you know, this idea of vulnerability is often role modeled or mentored, because that's really how we most of us learn as human beings. You know, we learn through mentorship. Mm-hmm. We also learn through modeling, where we you know, maybe role modeling or modeling, seeing somebody do something and then trying to do it ourselves. And so those are two really prominent ways of learning and picking up on certain habits as well.
Right.
And if you think about sort of as men who identify as men, some of our earlier role models might have had a very negative opinion of this idea of being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Like, real men don't cry. I mean, we've heard that cliche,
yes,
right?
We have.
But that was like a status quo position. And I know with a lot of the men that I associated with growing up, and especially my father, you know, he was not very emotive, you know, and that wasn't his fault. He was born in '44. His parents were of the generation where they, you know, my dad, I remember him telling me, I can remember on 2 occasions my parents said, I love me. You know, 2 occasions. And so when you think about that act of vulnerability, of letting ourselves express something that is very real to us,
right,
but also implies a bit of risk.
Right.
I mean, that's what it is, being vulnerable. Like someone's got to go first. You got to be honest, open, authentic. You know, it's a form of actually deepening connection, not separating us. It brings us closer together, but we have to overcome some things,
right?
You know, past beliefs that were instilled in us based on other people or other, maybe even modalities that we've been taught, you know, and other people that we've associated with. Like, we've developed belief systems somehow, and it's questioning, well, does this belief serve me? And
Mhm.
just to take you back, I'm going back about 15 years now. When I was in my early 30s, I was struggling a lot
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I got into business quite young. I had a great mentor. I advanced very quickly. I
Mhm.
didn't go to school for business,
Mhm.
but I knew I had a knack for it growing up with entrepreneurial parents and just being
Right.
around that kind of energy.
Right.
And I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of
Mm.
that. And also a lot of just the easiest way to put this, Maurice,
Mhm.
is I was questioning myself a lot of the time and I believed I had to put on a certain persona,
Right. Right.
especially as our company was scaling and I was
Mhm.
taking on more of a leadership capacity and having a
Mhm.
lot more responsibilities thrust upon me.
Mhm.
I believed I had to act a certain way. I had to
Mhm.
be tough. I had to be disciplined. I had to be firm, regimented, like just all these very masculine terms, we'll say. Okay. And I did that, but I also on the inside felt like I was kind of disconnected.
Right. Right.
And for me, being vulnerable or opening up about some of those concerns or some of those thoughts in my mind,
Mhm.
no way, man. Because I felt fear of judgment,
Right. Yeah.
fear that people may not think I'm suitable for this role or this company or this vision that I had,
Mhm.
and as such, you learn how to just swallow that.
Yeah.
And some of us will often cope with certain things. And for me, it was
Hmm.
alcohol. Alcohol
Mm.
became very prominent and it was just a normalized thing because everybody
Mhm.
was doing it that I associated with. So it was like, man,
Right.
whatever. I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. Like,
Right.
what's the big deal?
Mhm.
Until it was a big deal,
Right.
especially with my spouse, my kids, who were
Mhm.
both under the age of 6 at that time. And yeah, it was really challenging. Things started those little cracks, right? Those
Mhm.
fissures that we see appear, they were growing pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Things are becoming very unmanageable. And I didn't know what to do. I
Hmm.
didn't know how to ask for help, Maurice,
Mhm.
because I thought asking for help was a sign of weakness.
Yes. Yep.
And this is where this idea of vulnerability comes in, right? Because
Mhm.
it's not a man thing, it's not a woman thing, it's not a them they thing. It's a
Right.
it's a it's a human thing.
Right.
We're not human beings that choose to be emotional. We're
Mhm.
not like Spock on Star Trek, right? We can turn it on and off when we want. We are emotional beings. We're
Right.
sentient, right?
Mhm.
Like we have feelings, and it's a very big part of what makes humanity humanity. And
Hmm.
but we have so many different shades of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And vulnerability is a way to tap into that ability to connect with others. And I was very apprehensive because I had a lot of fears around this idea of letting people in.
Hmm.
And at 32, my wife's looking at me after a night out, and I, that was pretty status quo for us. I
Mhm.
turn my phone off and be like, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry, the battery died. I lost track of
Yeah.
time."
Yeah.
And I use that excuse more than once. It's now a habit, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and
Yeah.
anyway, so it got to a place where we were talking about what it was going to look at to co-parent our kids, and
Mhm.
and I'd have to move out because
Mm.
I wasn't creating an environment that was positive for our girls to grow up in,
Right.
and this is where I realized, Maurice, that I was in the wrong because I knew at
Hmm.
that moment, being a guy that was in sales, and you can
Mhm.
probably relate to this, is like we have a great way of handling objections.
Yeah.
We can deal with those tough
Right.
conversations, those
Right.
challenging conversations, and yet I found myself with nothing.
Hmm.
There was
Mhm.
nothing to defend
Mhm.
because I knew deep down that my actions were not representative of the type of person that I always believed I wanted to be and the person that I
Hmm.
was showing up as. And that was a very vulnerable moment for myself to get honest with me.
Hmm.
And from there, I just made a commitment to my family because I was more afraid of the idea of living a life without them than a life of,
Right.
working through these challenges I had and again being the man that I wanted to be for them, the
Mhm.
father, the husband, the business partner, all those things. And I made a commitment to go 1 year with no drinking.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
within about 6 weeks, I realized, whoa, that was a big commitment. That was really
Mhm.
hard.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. And that's when I actually broke down with my wife one night on a couch, in our
Mhm.
home. She just asked me, like, what's going on? Like, what's really going on? And for some reason, we'd been together for a decade at this point. Like, I'd never really truly been honest with my wife about that emotional person inside of me.
Okay. Okay.
But yet on that night on the couch, I don't know
Mhm.
what came over me, but I think it was all the stress, the anxiety. Did 6 weeks without a drink, which is like the
Right.
longest stint I had in a long time.
Right.
And I broke down. and I just verbal diarrhea all over my
Yeah.
and she held space for me. She was so
Yeah.
generous with her listening. She just looked at me, would put her hand on my lap, grab my hand, give me a squeeze. Like she was fully present for me, just unloading everything that was going on inside. That experience, was extremely cathartic. Like I felt this release, this immense release, because all of a sudden there was somebody here to just hear and see me,
Right.
but also
Right.
acknowledge. And this is what she said to me: Dai, it's going to be okay. Thank you for sharing this with me. I love you. And then she said, I think you should talk to somebody. And I'll tell you, I was a little bit triggered by that initially. I was like, what? Well, I just talked to you for like 40 minutes about everything. Like I bore my soul to you.
Right.
And I had a negative opinion of mental health support. I'd grown up with that in certain family members. And so there's a bit of a negative stigma associated with that. And so I was very apprehensive, but I said, you know what? I want to experience big change. I better do things that I've never done before.
Right.
And that's when I started to see a psychologist, and a therapist. And it lasted about 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
Of seeing these people on a fairly regular basis, just to talk through and reframe a lot of my past beliefs and really start to iron things out, you know?
Right.
And get clearer on really who do I want to be and why do I want to be that? And what do I need to start doing to really live into that? And that is when everything changed. Everything changed. And like after that year happened, and I know because everyone is always thinking, I'm sure your audience is thinking, well, what happened after a year?
Yeah.
Well, we got to the end of the year, and I'm like, so much has changed, babe. Like, gosh, this year, like I just can't believe how good I feel and all the changes that have happened. What do you think would happen if I kept going? She kind of says to me, she goes, I don't know. What would you get? I'm going, well, let's find out.
Right.
Now, 15 years, I haven't had a drink, but it's not like I don't think alcohol is a bad thing. I'm not here to vilify alcohol. I'm not here to say, hey, don't drink.
Right.
But I am here to say, if you have certain crutches like that are holding you back from really realizing the potential that's within you, maybe it's something to take a pause on for a little while you figure that out. And my business, grew very quickly after that year. My physical health and well-being got much better. My relationships became deeper. And I slowly became more and more comfortable with being vulnerable. The version of me 15 years ago, Maurice, would not have this conversation with you, okay? There's no way. Because I wasn't in a place to do that yet. I didn't have the skills or the resources or the awareness of myself to be able to do that. And even Maslow, it might be considered a bit archaic as far as his research, but it still stands today. And, this hierarchy of needs at the top is
most definitely
actualization, right?
Right.
I mean, it's amazing how many distractions we have preventing us from that place.
Yes.
So sorry, that's my long-winded story of giving you this relationship with vulnerability.
No, and that's fine. I think you touched on quite a few things. One, how important it is to have a great support system, because your wife, she had every reason, every right, every idea to say, you know what, Dai, I'm out. I'm leaving. Whatever it might have been. At any given time, you could have come home. One of them times you turned off your phone, the house could have been empty, right?
Absolutely.
We've seen that so many times in movies and everything else, right? Number two, and I think this is some of the things that we deal with today in society, is putting up this face that we, where we want everyone to see a certain part of us. Even when I listen to some of my friends who go out on dates, you're only meeting the person that you're dating. You're not meeting the real individual, right?
That's right.
So even in business, sometimes you only see one part of that individual, not the whole individual. So and so in your talking, you're talking about being authentic, being genuine. What has been the reward beyond the business growing? What else has been the reward of being authentic and genuine to yourself, one, and then to your relationships that are your business partners, your family members, and all those type of things?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a few things here. And I think before I dive into my own personal experience, there's some things to reference that I think are much bigger than me, but also some things that some people may not be aware of. And One of which is like the Blue Zone research. So this is research around the world. It was commissioned by National Geographic. The gentleman that led it is Dr. Dan Blutner. They just had a Netflix series come out. It's a mini series. It's a documentary style mini series. It talks about these 5 places around the world where they have the highest density populations of people that live to be 100 years or older. And now, just so you know, they're not like my Grandma Grace. Okay, my Grandma Grace was sitting in an old age home until she was 98. You know, those last decades, she pretty much just sat there, and she'd occasionally fart and laugh and giggle, and but she wasn't. She was kind of just waiting around, and because she had lost a lot of that vitality based on the lifestyle that she led. And this is common. This is very common, and yet in these blue zones, they have people thriving into their hundreds. And what he did was, when he researched these 5 areas around the world, he found that there was 9 commonalities in each of those. And a few of these are very striking because these are accessible. They don't cost money. All right. It takes intention, it takes time and energy, but it doesn't take money. So it's not a monetary barrier preventing us from leaning into these habits or lifestyle choices. One of which is very, very prominent, is this idea of connecting with a purpose. Also, connecting with community, having a tight-knit tribe or family and relationships, obviously having more of a plant-based diet. Now, they weren't saying, hey, you got to be vegan or vegetarian, but they did say, a lot of their natural calories came from plant sources.
Okay.
And like nuts, legumes, various plants, fruits, and veggies. And so when you start to look at some of these commonalities, we start to realize, geesh, longevity and vitality, it's a big part of this ability to be resilient is the relationships that we hold, and that vision, and more so importantly, is our vision of ourselves internally, because that internal view influences our entire worldview.
Right.
We don't like how we're feeling on the inside. It's going to taint the way we look at the world and interact with it. And so I share this because, that is some very well-documented research that speaks to some of these things that can help us live longer and happier. Okay. And it's not some secret sauce at McDonald's on a burger that we can't figure out what the hell it is, right? Like this is something that we can tap into. And for me, what I've really experienced most by becoming more comfortable with opening up with people more quickly. Now, I'm not saying that everybody deserves our vulnerability.
Yeah, right.
It's earned, just like trust is earned. But somebody always has to go first, right? Someone has to open up first to start to gain that trust. It's like going out on a date. You see that person that you like. It's like someone's got to ask someone out first.
Right.
There's a little fear there. There's a little bit of concern because we're putting ourselves out there for potential hurt, embarrassment, pain, a big no, right? And I mean, and this applies in business very much so too. Okay, it's very much in business. I mean, we look at our phone, we're like, gosh, I don't want to do any more calls. I can't handle another no, right? I can't handle another rejection to a proposal, right? Like, just there's things that we battle as entrepreneurs as well, and this is universal. We all deal with this challenge,
right? But
as I started to open up, here's the craziest part that happened, Maurice. Other people that I knew and respected that thought, man, they've got their stuff together. They could be great mentors. I wonder if I open up to them about some of the things I'm struggling with.
Right.
And so I did. And this is what surprised me. They started saying, oh my gosh, me too. Like, wait a minute. I see you online. I mean, we connect at networking events. Really? You struggle with this too? I had no idea. And this is the thing about vulnerability. When we start opening up, we start to realize that we invite others that have similar challenges to connect with one another to try to support each other.
Right.
It's amazing, and that has provided me incredible growth over the last 15 years because I can ask for help. I'm not afraid to ask for help. I'm not afraid to say I've made a mistake or I don't know.
That's hard.
Because all that is an act of vulnerability as well. Right?
Yeah, it's hard to say I don't know.
Oh gosh, yeah. Especially with Google and ChatGPT these days,
I know, right? Because a lot of us, because we want to become the authority, right? Everybody's looking for the authority, and want to be the go-to person. Sometimes giving up that idea that, hey, we don't know the answers. We do need to do the research. We do need to be educated in another way. having these type of conversations, helps us to grow in those situations. So sometimes not being able to say, I really don't know is the hardest thing to do.
It is.
You
But
know,
it's incredible what it invites others to do, though, too, right? Because, I mean, think about every great scientific breakthrough. It started with, I don't know.
mm-hmm.
Every single one.
Right.
Every single one. It's not like they thought, like, and even sometimes they're like they were trying to design something completely different. You think about 3M, right? Like, what an innovative company. I mean, it's friggin'
Right.
in their catchphrase, right? Like,
Right.
it's talks about innovation. But you think about, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard this story, but most people have Post-it notes in their home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Post-it notes were a mistake. They were trying to invent and create the most sticky glue, right? Like an adhesive that would not release, and ended up making a boo-boo. And they made this amazing Post-it note type of stickiness that they could apply. And I mean, it's a massive business, just that alone.
Right.
That patent has brought them a ton of volume, and sales and cash, and that's just one of their innovations,
Right.
And so often innovation starts with a simple, I don't know. But you know what? If we get together with other people, maybe we can figure this out.
Yeah.
But again, we got to get vulnerable to invite people to help us, to be part of that team, part of that vision, mission, purpose, right? That often is greater than ourselves.
Right.
And I think that's what vulnerability provides us. It's not a weakness like the IT pros will maintain, right? The McAfees of the world, they're like, vulnerability is bad.
Yes. Right.
Right. Well, I'm inviting us to look at vulnerability through the human filter, right? And I think if we do, gosh, it unlocks so much for us and potential wise too.
Dai, I appreciate you coming on. Let me ask you this question though. Where can someone reach out to you so they can start living their best life today?
Well, thank you. It's always a choice, right? Every morning we got a choice. My wife woke up today. I was just like slow getting out of bed today. My wife gets out of bed and she goes, I'm choosing to make today awesome. And I mean, it was like sickly, right? She comes out into the living room. She dances like, happy day, happy. And I'm like, ugh.
Right.
But she reminded me it's a choice, right? How we get out of bed in the morning is a choice. And so living your best life is a choice as well, but it has to take action. And, sometimes just figuring out the best steps.
Right.
Sometimes it's nice to have a guide. And so if you're looking for someone to support you, or you're looking for good content to support you while you're leaning into that idea of creating your best life, I'm very active on social media, specifically Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So those are always easy places to find me. My name's Dai Manuel, and having a unique name is really cool because all the social media accounts were unencumbered. I got them all.
Right.
I'm not really active on TikTok or any of that yet, but my kids are trying to get me going, and then I have a website, daimanuel.com. I've been blogging for 16 years now.
Okay.
Lots of content on there. And then I've got a podcast that launched about 14 weeks ago called The 2% Solution, which talks all about these strategies I'm sharing with you today.
Wow. I appreciate you coming on today, man. Thank you for all the nuggets that you provided. But before I let you go, my question I ask everybody, my would you rather question, right?
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Well, do I get to go through all 3 doors, or I have to pick one?
I have not given any parameters. The parameters is all based off of you.
It's the philosopher in me. I'm like, well, let me see here. What about this? What about this? I'm trying to put all these parameters out. Well, I like the idea of a fork in the road because I've lived my life very much like that. I've always made decisions and I've chosen to go a certain direction, but I've never been able to turn around and go back. I mean, that's the thing about moving forward. It's the way time works. We're always moving forward. And so it's being okay to own the choice. But man, there's lots of times I choose to remember some of those forks in the road and be like, there was a pretty good lesson there. I went left when I really should have gone right, and so I appreciate that idea of living life because it often comes down to 2 choices. I do or I don't.
Right.
Yes or no. And I try to eliminate the gray area, the maybes of the world, because man, they're too draining. They're too draining. So I would have to go fork in the road. Yeah.
Nice. For me, I'm a fork in the road person too. Right or left, right or wrong, whatever it might be. And I'm not going to try to turn around. Some people like to turn around. Some people like to look at the feet in the grass, see road less travel, things like that. But I appreciate, you sharing your information, your story today, Dai.
Oh, thanks, Maurice. Listen, Maurice, you are a wonderful host, but also a very gracious listener. and you hold great space. Your energy is very warm and inviting. So it was, and I'm just acknowledging this because it is important to have some of those qualities to embrace vulnerability, but also to encourage it.
Yes.
And so you made it very easy for me to share today authentically, and I just want to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Cool, Dai. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it a lot.
No, thank you. You're doing great things, man. I mean, I'm really excited to share out this series with the world, or at least the people I'm connected with. And,
I know, right?
Bring some new listeners to you, because I think this is just a wonderful platform that you've created, and just such a valuable service for everyone. So thank you.
Dai, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Gracious, man. Thank you. and thank you all for listening to That Will Never Work podcast, and continue on.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?